Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Lori, and welcome to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. This podcast fosters curiosity and understanding about neurodiversity while empowering individuals with tools for acceptance and inclusion in classrooms, the workplace, and communities. Featuring shared stories of neurodiverse life experiences, it sheds light on navigating a world not designed for diversity. Universally Unique starts now.
Share this beautiful ride of life with Dr. Lori Noto. And today's topic is something that's been very difficult for several of us in our lives. And on some days can still seem difficult, but it's because of Dr. Lori and her reminding us today, everyone belongs. Dr. Lori, it's great to have you here. Thank you for this show. This opener is incredible. And let's take a moment, as you would always do, in starting.
Okay. All right. I like to start things, no matter what it is I'm doing, with taking a few breaths. So we'll do 3 box breaths together. This is something you can do with your eyes open if somebody is driving in the vehicle. So you're going to breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. Back to regular breath. Pardon?
Did I need that?
It's amazing what just
Gosh.
a moment's pause will do.
Yeah. I had a moment yesterday, real scary, real scary experience for my friend. And I forgot. And I was just talking about how we were going to start, and I forgot. But today's show is to help us, and thank you for doing that. But the story behind the story is what drives, as Terry Knudsen said earlier today, passion, purpose, and connection. What was this journey like for you? And this show we're doing is now a new platform to really emphasize we all belong.
This actually was not my original plan to become an educator. I had some other plans, but as it kind of came together, what I realized is I was influenced very much by 2 people when I was younger. I better not cry. One of them was an aunt who had intellectual disabilities and who was born in the 1920s. So she went off to kindergarten, and she did kind of okay in kindergarten because when she was in school, kindergarten was mostly about play. And then she went to 1st grade and was having a hard time. And I believe they held her back in 1st grade. And then they told my grandparents that she couldn't come to school anymore because she couldn't keep up. And they were immigrants from Italy, so I'm sure there were some communication challenges there. But at that point in time, in education, telling a kid they couldn't come to school was not it was not unheard of. And the only people who went to school after that were people whose parents had a lot of money. The other person who influenced me, who probably has no idea that he ever did, is a neighborhood friend's brother who had Down syndrome. And he was an escape artist. He would manage to leave the house and get out, he'd climb over the fence or whatever, and he'd be out wandering around in the neighborhood. He would come over to our house and want to run our lawnmower. He loved things that were mechanical at that point in time. And because he was the younger sibling of 4 older sisters who had grown up with him, they didn't seem to be worried about the fact that he was running around the neighborhood. I thought it was a bad idea because I was an only child, so I used to go look for him. So I think those two had a pretty significant influence on me without me necessarily realizing it until I started a master's program to become a special education teacher. So that was kind of the beginnings of all of that. And then when I was in my master's program, I did an internship that actually helped me pay for my education, and I worked with children on the autism spectrum. And that was in the 80s when kids who were considered to be autistic were very, very significantly involved. Most of the students that I worked with didn't talk. They had a lot of very problematic behaviors that got in the way of learning. Some of them were aggressive, some of them would shut down. But I was just fascinated and trying to figure out what was going on in their minds. So that's been kind of the beginnings of my professional career. So I've always had some contact back to folks that were neurodiverse.
Yeah. But see, isn't this interesting? Because, our journeys lead us to the place where we could be of most good in the world.
Mhm.
That's a Dr. Pat quote. I just came up with that because that's what I'm feeling these days.
Yeah.
And, we don't think that. But part of this is looking at you, where you moving forward. And then, everyone is welcome is the poster that we're showing on the screen throughout the show today. And one of the things is that being part of a group of people that was so like not even, okay, the word was you're slow and the kids called you stupid.
Mhm.
And so now we've tried to become a little bit more, what is the word? Compassionate.
Yeah.
And I do have to thank our pop culture for that
Yeah.
and what the pop culture has done, but
Mhm.
it doesn't really take away the challenges and the struggles. And let's talk about this. When you see the poster, what is that first thought? What do we want to tell people today?
Yeah. When I saw that poster, I'll give a little background to the audience. Some people may already be aware of this, but there was a middle school teacher in Idaho who had this poster in her classroom. She was asked by the district administration to take it down. And when they offered an explanation, which I think is not really a good explanation, but their explanation was that it was not neutral enough and that it was making a political statement. And given the work I've done, given the people that I continue to support, given the people that I've had in my life, I can't imagine what political statement that was making. It just happens to be a poster that has a number of hands that are a variety of different shades, which I'm not the person who made the decision for it to come down, but I have a feeling that if it didn't have those hands, or if those hands were all one neutral color, and it said everyone belongs, maybe nobody would have even had a problem with it. But that also defeats the purpose of the poster. The poster is trying to say everyone is welcome in that class. So I think the challenge for me is, then if everyone's not welcome, then who is welcome and who's not welcome, which doesn't really work very well for me because I've spent my entire professional career trying to make sure that people who were not seen as mainstream folks, so to speak, were accepted for who they were and what it was that they bring to a situation. I mean, in my opinion, everybody has something to contribute. It may not be immediately obvious when you meet somebody. You may have to get to know them a little bit better. But every single person that I've ever worked with that would be considered neurodiverse, or anybody else in any other particular categories of disabilities or mental health issues, always had something to contribute. It just wasn't always necessarily noticed, or it wasn't necessarily always respected. So I had a really hard time with this decision. And the belief was that posters were supposed to be neutral. I don't think it seemed like pretty neutral. poster to me, everyone's welcome. Why would you want to say that people weren't welcome?
Look, sometimes, I have some friends that I learned, you know what? I learned such really cool things from my Japanese business friends.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing what I've learned from them. I learned one thing. When you work with people, I'm not stereotyping, but I've learned about this beautiful culture over time. And what I've learned is this. How are you today, Dr. Noto? And you will say,
In the United States, I would say I'm fine. If I were somewhere else,
exactly.
I might tell you the truth.
But here's what they do. Well, how are you today? And it will happen 3 times. You see, there's something about repetition that we need to really demonstrate to
Mhm.
make sure we're understanding it. There are a couple things here we're talking about. I'm excited about the future of your show. And I want to talk about that for a minute
Okay.
because this show and the future of the show is to really shine a light on the fact that yes, everyone belongs, but it is going to be a regularly and frequently reminder. Look, when I grew up, I was different, but not less than. I
Mhm.
stuttered. So that made it interesting. And because of stuttering, it's why I'm so good at what I do today and how I see the world.
Yeah.
Because we know if you stutter, you have to have the patience of the saint. And the bottom line is before you actually can answer the question, you will hear 10 other questions. So you learn how to integrate those 10 questions.
Mhm.
But the other thing that I love about this is we need to scream this now, shout it, don't we?
Yeah. I think it's always been important. I'm feeling like currently it is even much more important. And that anybody who does not fit a particular box or group or whatever it is that some individuals see as being
Mhm.
the right place to be, um, are seen as less than and are being pushed and cast off again. And we spent a lot of time changing that
Yeah.
attitude. And I, if this little teeny piece of what it is that I get the opportunity to do stops someone someplace from discounting, excluding, misrepresenting, misunderstanding an individual who they see as different from them, then I've made at least a little step towards helping to alleviate some of the things that are going on.
One little step by you, another step by me, and the many others, because for a really long time, we have treated this like addiction and alcoholism and the shame and the guilt around that. And, a number of years ago, when I started to talk about my own recovery, people like, why do you have to share that? I mean, not if this was it. Why do you have to share that?
Yeah.
And then I told my story about Dr. Races and how I was evaluated for a year because I blocked out and I discovered some fascinating things. But see, I didn't need a doctor to tell me that there were some things I saw differently in the world, but I was afraid to tell the world.
Yeah.
We have to stop that,
Yeah.
right? So when we're talking about everyone belongs to have a voice free of guilt, shame, and fear. Isn't that also part of your message?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that many of the individuals that I've known that are neurodiverse, especially those that have more communication skills, so to speak, and who are out and about in the world, are oftentimes completely misunderstood, and people make judgments about them. I think that sometimes for some of the folks that don't have as many communication skills or who look like they have more challenges, I think sometimes people don't, they look at them differently, but in a slightly different way, more in a benevolent way, more as in a sympathetic way, or, oh, poor so and so. But when you get folks that are like out there working, engaging at the store, doing all the things, and there's something about the way that they operate in the world that's different, then I think people make even more judgments because they're looking at somebody who they think is exactly like they are. But the reality is, none of us are exactly like anybody. We're just ourselves. We're all ourselves and we're all unique. in all of our own ways. And so sometimes I get a little bit stuck with the whole idea that I don't understand why this is a big problem.
Yeah.
I can't figure out why it's such a big problem because it's so incredibly obvious to me that none of us are exactly the same.
Yeah.
But apparently it's not as obvious to everyone else.
No, it's not. But these actions and movements we take. Now, let's talk about the distribution of the poster because this is meaningful. The thing itself is meaningful, but the journey the thing takes is like more meaningful. This had a journey. Describe the journey and tell us where we are today.
Well, what appears to have happened as I went to go look for it, because I wanted a visual of it, is people are making shirts. People are making all kinds of things. And I think that that particular teacher is getting hopefully a lot of support and maybe potentially some job offers to go work someplace where people appreciate that she wants to welcome all of the children into her classroom. Um, Unfortunately, I think in the United States, we have such a tendency to be so immensely judgmental. And we're all different. I mean, we're probably the most different country in the world with the most unique population of people from such a variety of backgrounds that it doesn't like this is where I keep getting stuck where I don't understand why we're having this problem. Like we're not on an island in the middle of nowhere where everyone's exactly the same. We are in a place where a whole bunch of different people have come here, and we were at one point considered from an educational perspective to be ahead of the game when it came to supporting people who did not learn in a traditional fashion. And I think we're falling away from that too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about too with you because this is the first of many shows that will be done. And so this is a kickoff point, but it's also an invitation for those of you out there. And Dr. Lori, you're available to help people. See, this is the bottom line. This is your field. This is your purpose, your passion, and your gift. So how do people connect with you to work with you? And this is a message for all y'all out there, parents. I just want to say to parents out there, look, just look at us two sitting here. We have doctor in front of our name, maybe in different fields, but look at us for a minute, if you could. There are reasons we work with the people we work with, because when I was younger and I was called stupid and whatever other names I'm not even going to repeat, there were people that showed up. Amy Sarah showed up and pulled me in a small room and looked at me and said, "There's nothing wrong with you. You're okay." That was a teacher in junior high school. That stayed with me. Dr. DeVito, who understood that I couldn't read or write, but boy, give me a viola and I could play the you-know-what out of that. Dr. Cherilyn Grandrose in my doctoral program saw this, saw me hang on by a thread to past statistics, and then mentored me through, and we ended up co-authoring a paper. So many people in our lives. That's why we have to give back here. How do people find you so you can help them find their purpose, passion, connection?
Okay. Well, there's two ways. They could go to my website, which is www.notoholisticconsulting.com, and I'll spell that for you. It's NOTOHOLISTICconsulting.com. That felt a little like a spelling bee, which I was never very good at because I can't spell that well. Or they can email me directly at Noto Consulting, 2002 at gmail.com.
I want to ask you the symbolism for a minute. Of course, I have to bring up symbolism. I can't help myself. It's one of my little gifts. That's why I'm really good logo creator. But I want to talk about symbolism.
Okay.
I met a woman over the weekend who sat down and we did some esoteric work together, both for myself and Linda. And I've never been so accurately depicted in my life through what she shared. I felt heard. And that was so important to me. And I can't really describe it. But what we're talking about with the journey of the poster, isn't that also too to help those out there that don't seem to really be heard? Get a little space here.
Exactly.
A little
And I mean, they,
at a person.
yeah. I mean, not that you want there to only be one person, but individuals who make it through their educational experience and come out on the other side successful, for whatever that happens to mean for them, but it generally means they didn't get themselves into some kind of legal trouble, will report back. There was one person. There was at least one person. There was a teacher, there was a coach, there was a counselor, there was a grandparent, there was a next door neighbor, there was a music instructor, that as long as one person believes in you, you can figure out how to go forward. But I think when no one believes in you, it's really hard to find that within yourself. And I think that that particular teacher, who I personally do not know, was trying to let students know, if you need somebody, I'm your person. If you click with me and I'm, you feel like you want to engage, I'm here for you. And that I think is incredibly critical. It's so important in education at this point. It's important in life too, but
It is. I'm so fascinated. I don't think I'm going to be able to say this without crying a little bit. I have a best friend, you know her, and we've been friends since 1972. And I remember walking down the halls of Bell Labs with Linda, and of course, I was given the science people to work with, the Big Bang, Arno Penzias, who I called Mr. Bagel. I mean, that was just me, but I related to him because it was a level. And we're walking down the hall, and I was a mail person, and I delivered mail to all the PhDs at the end of the name. And I looked at Linda and I said, I'm going to get a PhD. And Linda looked at me and said, absolutely. And then I said, what exactly is a PhD? No judgment,
no,
just that affirmation stayed with me. Why did I want it? Because the people I delivered mail to had PhD by the end of the game, at end of their name. They taught me how to play ping pong. They juggled. I loved how messy all of their offices were. Couldn't even find a little mail tray, but they were really nice, cool people. And we talked about the most incredible things. See, isn't that what you're talking about? One person.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
one person. Yep. And I would suspect all of those folks that you delivered mail to, if we could go back and find them, they would probably share a fairly similar story, because they were probably considered the odd person out in many situations and probably thought about the world in a way that not everybody else does. But we need them. We need them to think that way.
Yeah. Dr. Arno Penzias, by the way, who discovered Big Bang with a group of people. Yeah. Like really Bell Labs telephone company. And he's studying satellites because that's who he was. What's your personal message today for people? Because we're good. That old book, what is that book? I'm okay, you're okay. I
Okay,
got
yeah.
that book in a hot second when that thing came out.
Yeah. I think my message would be that everyone does belong. And if you find yourself in a situation where you can welcome someone, please do that. If you find yourself in a situation where you don't feel welcome, I would encourage, I guess, folks to look maybe for a place that looks like they're welcome. It could be a coffee shop, it could be the library, it could be a classroom, it could be their next door neighbor, but try to find your ally. They're out there, and sometimes you got to look a little harder. And I think if you're not feeling really great about things, it may be harder to find them, but find that one person, find that Linda who's going to tell you you can get a PhD.
But also they can come to you and you
Oh, of
will
course.
also tell them.
Absolutely.
Because we all have to come together. I think it was Hillary Clinton that I believe she was the first one to say it takes a village. And in the area that you and I are talking about, it does take a village, and
Yeah.
it takes all people. And sometimes some folks, it takes a little bit longer to get on board, to see somebody like me and somebody like you. We're different, but we're not less than. And we
Exactly.
may have to overcome obstacles that seem so high, but
Yeah.
now people don't have to do it alone, do they?
No, they really don't. And I think, one of the good things about social media and the internet is that people are finding their people. They may be in another country, they may be really far away, they may not be in the same time zone, but I think that is a place where some folks are finding their people. But I think we also know that it's important to be in physical space with people to have the opportunity to meet people in real life.
Well, thank you. And please, one more time, let folks know how they can get a hold of you, both consulting services and wellness services. What's the best way to do that?
The website is really probably the best. Then you can find out a little bit more about me. www.nodoholisticconsulting.com, or with an email at nodoconsulting2002@gmail.com.
And for all of you out there, we're not done. We're just warming up here. It's what you're getting today is a spark. As this show progresses and we do more of these, you're going to get the fire. You're going to get the purpose. You're going to get the passion. Because we need not to leave anyone out. Everyone belongs. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. Join me, Dr. Lori, on Transformation Talk Radio every second and fourth Monday at 11:30 Pacific Time as we continue to explore navigating a world not designed for diversity. For advocacy and support for individuals with disabilities, let's connect. Learn more about consulting and life coaching at nodoholisticconsulting.com.